everyone. How's it going? Welcome today to Women History Month, brought to you by ONEeXp. I am Courtney Keating. I'm the CMO, of eXp World Holdings, and today I'm joined by 5 wonderful panelists. Our flow today is a little bit around kind of rotation of questions and people, so you'll see people coming in and out of the frames. Amanda Rabideau is here with us today, a good friend of mine, founder of Arch Collective, which is a very exciting company. Corey McCarthy, also a good friend of mine and a fellow CMO, who's over Unifocus CMO. So with that, what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about the topic. We're talking about technology. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about what is a gender gap, a misrepresentation in terms of, women being able to participate in certain ways. And it's a sensitive topic, right? You bring this up and, there's feelings that are emoted. What I thought would be powerful today and why we're doing this is we want to unpack, like, what does this mean? What does it mean to be a woman in technology? What does it mean to have to feel this gender gap? And how do we start to kind of overcome that? And then towards the later part of this conversation, we're going to go a little deeper into, a little bit more on real estate in certain industries and how that's impacted. So the first thing I'd like to do is, Amanda, how about we do this? Why don't you, tell us a little bit more about yourself and this topic?
Sure. Happy to talk about it. It's one of my favorites. So as Courtney mentioned, I started Arch Collective a few years ago. This is a marketing agency that specifically focuses on helping B2B tech startup companies grow. So I'm very much in the intersection of marketing and technology and certainly working with tech companies. And as a little more background on me, I'm the mother of 2 children. My oldest is 5, my youngest is 3. And so both, my personal life and of course my working life come to mind when thinking through, how do we address some of the gender equality in the tech industry? And, one of the things that I was very conscious of when I started Arch Collective, which is a little bit more background, I serve as a fractional CMO for these tech startup companies. And then I tap into a network of freelancers, which I call the collective, that helps support the execution of the strategy that I put into place. Well, the idea behind the collective actually came out of my time in the early stages of being a mother. I was an active member of Golden Gate Mothers Group, which is one of the largest mother groups, mother organizations, maybe the largest in the country. And in that time, I met all these amazing women. And this is back in 2017, which seems like a long time ago. But a lot of these women had to leave the workplace because of their children, or they chose to, and either wanted to get back, but was struggling to get back into the workplace because they had a gap on their resume, or they had to balance all of the demands of being a parent and then supporting their partner's career. And so they weren't able to go back full time. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to tap into all these amazing women who have all these skills, but they're just underutilized. And so, making sure that we're supporting women and specifically mothers in the workplace and in technology, is something that, is the foundation of the business that I built.
Oh, Amanda, that's great. And I think that's going to resonate with Corey. I know you guys have met each other before in the past. Mm-hmm. Courtney's a CMO. I was going to say Corey's a CMO. She is a mother. Corey, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you're finding, being a leader in technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Unifocus. I'm in the Bay Area, and it has been a journey. I started off in sales marketing in the media industry and worked my way up. And when it came time to have kids, 2 things happened. I really wanted to make the jump into tech, and I wanted to be a hands-on mom. And I was having a hard time rationalizing the 2. And so I did what any totally normal woman would do. When I was 8 months pregnant, I quit my job and I started up my own marketing firm and had about 10 clients, and it was great. However, I understood that I really needed to continue to grow my career alongside and in parallel with being a really awesome mom. And so when the opportunity came knocking to become a full-time CMO, I took it. And it's been fascinating, making that jump and trying to defend boundaries and trying to defend that work-life balance to give my daughter what she needs, and also to be proud of the work that I do and to thrive and really grow a meaningful career. And so along the way, there are a number of, traits that I have seen in colleagues and other women that I've worked with, one of which is the imposter syndrome. It's so funny when I coach and mentor and work with women who are coming to me and asking me for a raise, I question them and I actually coach them to say, hey, if you were a man, do you think they would be asking for this amount? And most of the time they'll say no. And I'm like, okay, well, why are you? A lot of that goes back into the imposter syndrome. So when a man is asked to do something, he'll say, yes, he can, even though he's got 50% of the skills necessary. If you ask a woman, even if she has 90% of the skills, she's going to be honest and say, no. And so, part of that goes into being brave and, going for it. But the other part is executive presence and what you're putting out there. And I think that communication is one of the biggest areas that we can work on to kind of bridge that gap. I find because of imposter syndrome, a lot of the females that I've worked with over explain. I think brevity is the soul of wit is a really great saying, because most of the successful people that I have seen in the work world are able to really do an artful job of taking a set of complex ideas and presenting it in a concise yet comprehensive thought. And that ability to self-edit and prioritize what matters in each particular group, in each particular set, without having to over-explain why you deserve a seat at the table, is a really critical skill that we all can work on, not just women, but I think all leaders.
And Corey, I want to piggyback on that. Something that a lot of the freelancers I work with, as I mentioned, are women. And something that I continually coach them on, and frankly, I have to work on it myself, is eliminating sorry from being such a common word that we use. Oftentimes I'm giving feedback and people say, oh, sorry, I thought this. And I always say, there is no need to apologize. It's feedback. And so I love that you're coaching your employees, your colleagues on asking for raises in an appropriate way to have that conversation. And I think that any way that other women can help support other women, especially young women, as they're building their career, to help get rid of some of these bad habits that our generation has created too, right? And help them, start not doing that in their career and changing the way that we're communicating. I think it's great that you're doing that.
Well, it's interesting too. Somebody had mentioned that there is an email tool out there that you can use as a plugin to actually remove any apologetic tone in your email.
Oh, wow.
So I'll try to find it and we'll see if we can put it into the comments, but that's great. My 10-year-old daughter is continually saying, I'm sorry. And I've been teaching her, no, unless you've hurt somebody or something is so important that you must apologize, you're not allowed to say sorry. Because she's saying it for silly reasons. And it starts, it is so ingrained and it is so inherent in our society, and it needs to stop. And I think that it's up to us to see it, acknowledge it, and call it out in the young women that we're raising, as well as the younger professional women that we're also raising in a professional setting.
Couldn't agree more.
You make a great point. I mean, you talk about how you've been able to help promote and really include other women, right? And one of my good friends, Allison Austin, I think Amanda, you know her. She talks about when you get in an elevator and it goes up, make sure to send it back down, right? So I think there's something really powerful about women including other women. That's absolutely key. I think women including other men is also key, right? I'm going to shift to that in a moment. But what triggered for me is this concept that sorry has become a filler word, right? It's just a filler word. If you look at, and I like the idea of an application because maybe it just needs a process, right, to actually rid us of this. The other thing I've heard people do, and I'd love comments on this, is this idea of, you've got a lot going on. Like I said, you're bifurcating a lot of your time between being a mother, being an executive, having a company. People will say, I can't do that, or I can't do that. I always put the word yet at the end of it, yet, right? Because this concept of saying you can't do something, it's all about mindset. That will really kind of seep into your mood and your mindset overall. How do you feel about that? How does mindset work here?
Well, the mindset that I take, and it's something I've tried to share with what I think it works, whether you're a mom or not. And two, it's certainly something I've shared with my friends who are becoming new moms. And it's this idea, it's not an original idea of mine, but it's the idea of the rubber balls versus the glass balls. And if those of you listening haven't heard this before, The idea is that the glass balls are the things in life that are precious and critical, and you want to make sure that you take care of those things. The rubber balls are the things that if they're not taken care of, they'll bounce back, right? And so throughout my day, month, week, whatever time period it is, I'm constantly evaluating, is it a glass ball or is it a rubber ball? Like, is this something that is critical? And if I drop it, it is going to set off, a domino effect of bad things or make a lasting impact that I can't fix? Or is it something that, look, if I don't get to it, the world's going to go on, everything will be fine. And so I don't know if it's I think that kind of aligns with, I should say, your idea of not yet. It may be that not yet, and it may be it's a rubber ball and you never get to it. But the idea is you got to figure out what's critical and not, because it's impossible for anyone to do everything every single time.
There's a great book out there called 4,000 Weeks. And the idea is that we don't have enough time on the planet to do everything. There are other pieces that I've read about picking the 5 things that create the most impact and only focus on those things. And if you only focus on those things, you're delivering value for yourself, you're delivering value for the organization, and the rest of it really falls away. And so it allows you to prioritize, get really good at prioritizing and sticking to it and showing wins for the time that you've invested.
I like it. So I was going to say, Corey, you're coming in really hot with all these great examples of how you can organize yourself, whether it's changing emails around or the top 5. I'm hearing a lot of good things here, and I know we're going to be having some comments and also some questions. So if you're out in the audience and you decide you want to ask a question, you'll see Slido in the chat and other areas. So please feel free to do that. Well, you know what I think is also an interesting component here is, we talk about misrepresentation and the gap, but I also think it's important to talk about what advantages or differentiators do women bring to the table in terms of technology.
Well, I'm happy to jump in here and start us off. I think that there is an incredible network that has been built around women in technology. And Courtney, I think you just mentioned, Corey, myself, you brought up Allison, and I could name probably another 100 women that you're well networked with as well. And I think that idea of building community is something that I don't want to say it comes naturally in every single woman, but if you had to, jump to that conclusion, I think it's fair. And so I think that the idea of being able to leverage your network and quickly come to solutions, tapping into the women. And I found that 9 times out of 10, if I reach out to a female colleague of mine in a time where I need either input or advice, they're going to pick up the phone or they're going to say, hey, let's work together to a solution, whether it directly impacts them or not. Now, one may say that's unpaid work too, and that's probably another topic. But I think that there's an incredible community, and that ability to send that elevator back down and get the next person and bring them up is something that I've certainly experienced in tech.
While I think it's really important that women send the elevator back down, I think that one of the missing conversations in all of these discussions is men's role in this. And I think that men as mentors to young professionals or even executives is incredibly important as well, because they have already blazed the trail and know what success looks like. And so there is, I think that there's a need for some of the male leaders in an organization to take the time and not only mentor the guys that they see at the country club, but take the time to give that secret sauce to some really amazing rock stars that are coming up and through the, ranks that happen to be female as well. Because I think that if some of these senior executives who are men who have seen great success take the time to show female, counterparts the ropes, that lights it on fire. And that is them showing an understanding of the problem and being a part of the solution. Because it's all great that we're sitting around talking about this, but what is men's role and what should they be responsible for in helping, kind of really solve this societal problem along the way?
And Corey, right now men hold over 70% of board seats in in US companies. It's near impossible if we don't have their support to get women that seat at the table. Yes, we can all do our best, but we're going to need the majority that's in those seats to help bring us into the table and make space and move their chair over so we can sit there too. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And that also goes back to our own ability to create relationships, not just with other women, but in the workplace as a whole. And so I think building those relationships and having the, in some cases, unfortunately, the bravery to go and ask some of these people to be our mentors and to help us and be proactive about getting out there and putting time on their calendars and making sure that it happens. One of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is that you yourself are your best advocate. Nobody is going to come and hand you free dollar bills. You have to go and you have to fight and you have to ask. That's true in every single facet in life. And so if you're not continually asking, if you're not continually looking for ways to grow, nobody is going to come and magically hand any of it to you.
These are good points. And there's, when you were talking, it reminded me of my mentor, Magdalena Yesel, who wrote Power Up, which is an excellent book. We had her speak at CoreLogic. And I remember as she was coming in to speak, in preparation, she said, well, I will only come if the CEO is introducing me. And, and it didn't matter if it was man or woman, just it was important. So this concept of kind of top down, that if you don't have buy-in from the very, the founder of the company, which, you guys both founded companies, or the CEO or the chairman, it does kind of get stuck there in the middle, right? And, that top down makes a difference. How does that apply? Since you've worked for large companies and smaller companies, how does that differ between a startup and a smaller company versus, a GE or something with hundreds of thousands of people?
I think it's relatively the same. I think that it's the kernel idea in here is authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can all smell BS a mile away. And so the leaders really need to truly believe in it. They need to talk the talk and walk the walk. And if they don't, then the expectation at the next level is subpar. And that really trickles down and filters through the entire organization. And so acceptance of some bad practices at the top really set the tone for the rest of the organization. And for leaders that truly want to make a difference and make an impact, they really need to show up in a way that they shouldn't even need to talk about it, because it just is. And to them, it is just breathing. It actually shouldn't even be a topic of conversation, because it is so inherent through every thread within the organization.
That should be involuntary, right? It should just already naturally happen. Man, it's a situation. I mean, you're leading your company. Obviously, you're a major advocate for women. Feels right to say that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And some of the things I've seen are when there are women events, the CEO and the rest of the executive team, male, female, whatever, everyone showing up to women events that support women. It's not, again, kind of going back to this, not just women's job to show up, it's the company's, because the women are part of the company. Another thing is, for me, I love to get my collective members of the freelancers that are doing the work to give them FaceTime. A majority of them are women. And I think it's important to not, but even though I'm a female, to present their work, let them have their own voice, give them an opportunity to speak. And I think that, just letting them have that moment to shine is important, to say, look, like, it's not just one woman. There's a million women behind me that are making this amazing work, making getting you these amazing results and driving this impact. So I think within tech, it's like seeing the participation. There's a lot more diversity programs that I've seen at tech startups than I did in my time in corporate America. Although I was there for a short period of time, I've mostly been at startups. So I think that startups tend to break the mold because they can build whatever they want. They're not beholden to a quarterly report because they're public or what have you. So I actually see a lot of tech companies really blazing a new trail and doing things that I haven't seen all the other companies do.
It's exciting. I mean, it is. We're turning over a new chapter, I believe. You touched on something earlier, Corey, right when you joined, you talked about mentorship and how you're mentoring women. And it came up again, a couple of minutes ago, and it triggered for me. How do you, what advice do you give to a woman in terms of how do they pick a mentor? How do they ask for a mentor? I'd love it to hear some of your tips from you and Amanda.
I think that you need to identify people either within your company or within your industry that are inspiring and have defined success. So when I look to my circle of friends, I know which friends to go to for which they are successful in their arena. Don't know what happened there. So I think it's important to pick people that have already accomplished that specific, nuance that you want to improve in yourself. And then the, easiest way to do it is invite that person to coffee and say, hey, you know what? Here are a couple of things that I would like to improve about myself. I see those qualities in you. And everyone likes to, hear that they're, good at something. And once you, break down and show, a little bit of, self-reflection on what you'd like to improve and, compliment that person and, let them know that you look up to them in that particular area, and ask them if, they would regularly spend, 30 minutes once a week or once every other week, helping give you tips and tricks about how to level up in that area. It'll be really hard to say no. And nobody's going to say no to a coffee with you. So the idea is to just ask, advocate for yourself, keep it going, be proactive. You're the one that's going to run that relationship. Don't depend on that mentor to run it for you or, hand you a lot of these questions on a silver platter, and come prepared every week with a list of questions.
That's important because I've had mentees and it kind of, we get on a call, there's no agenda, and I'm not sure exactly what value I can provide to them. So I think that's a really good point. Amanda, anything to add on the topic of mentorship?
Just expanding on a few points, because I agree with everything Corey said. One is that set expectations and goals too. Look, this is specifically what I'm trying to get out of this, whether it's a new job or, getting a raise or a promotion, what have you. Let them know. And, also I think it's helpful because if you build that relationship and it goes on organically beyond that, that's nice. But then it's also like, if you get to that point, you can both be like, hey, this was successful. Do we want to continue this? And then Courtney, what you just mentioned, which is, I would assume that it's on the person asking for the mentorship to be the one driving it, to be preparing it, to come to the table with, this is what I need or what I'm looking for. Now, over time, I'm sure that the mentor will have things that come to mind for him or her. But really, if you're looking for mentorship, the onus is on you. So you're the one to drive it, to follow up, to be responsible and prepared for those meetings. And that if that mentor, has to cancel or doesn't have time, you got to roll with it and then just, do your best to rebook and reschedule.
Another thought here too is, if there isn't anybody in your network that is readily accessible, I would ask as part of your employment package for a coach or some, set number of coaching sessions, and find a coach in your industry, in your profession that you can pay for, because they will actually do a better job of, leading the discussion and moderating for you and really kind of identifying where you're at and giving you a couple of key tools to kind of meet you where you're at to take you to the next level.
So I'm hearing, if I were to kind of encapsulate this, I'm hearing, you're going to have some mentors that you authentically get, right? In terms of like just a natural kind of chemistry, and they join you and you have coffee and you make the ask, but at the same time, you can also, pay for a coach or get a coach that will help you with that flow and what you need to do, that might see some things that you don't. So I guess it's a hybrid approach is what I'm hearing. I like it.
And I think to that, it may not be, it's sort of like dating. The first person that you meet with, they might not be a good fit, right? You might need to have a conversation here or talk to another mentor there or find a coach or supplement and do both. So, if you don't have luck with the first person and they do say no, or it feels awkward and uncomfortable, okay, well then move on and find the next one. It's not guaranteed that it's going to be the perfect fit, first time out of the shop. But, I certainly have had that. I've had, and Courtney, some of my interesting mentorship stories with executives and whatnot. And it's like, that's okay. You learn from it, both how to be a mentor yourself and how to be a better mentee. And then you move on and you make the same approach the next time.
I think there's an app for this. I feel like there's an app for this, right?
I think there should be.
Something in here too is one of the things that we need to all be encouraged to do is trust our gut. And so if we get into any of these conversations and it doesn't feel quite right, we BS or don't like the way it's going, think critically. Don't blindly follow what these people are saying just because we put these people on a pedestal of a mentor or a coach, because none of us actually deserve to be on a pedestal. We're all still learning. And if you're honest about that, then, that's probably not the conversation that you need to be having too.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so glad we did a deep dive on mentorship. It really does make a difference. It's how you build your influence. Okay, I think it's time we add some people to the party. So
do
we
it.
have 3 of our esteemed EXP realtors here today, and I'm going to be introducing Rizwana Afzali. She is an expert in social media. She, like I said, is an esteemed real estate agent. We've got Shannon Millen, who's also, Shannon Milligan is also an icon agent. So one of the top agents we've got in realtor. And Lakeisha Cunningham is also an icon agent. So we're going to be joining, kind of this real estate conversation or thread, if that works for everyone, which I think it does. So with that, why don't we have, Rizwana, Shauna, Lakeisha, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourselves and kind of this experience of the intersection of real estate, which isn't necessarily male dominated, right? And how you are focusing on technology and marketing.
Sure. So my name is Rizwana Afzali, and I'm so honored to be here with all of you guys. You guys are powerhouse women here on this panel. And so, just me coming into real estate 11 years ago or so, I was not put on stages like EXP has put me on stages just because I wear my faith on my head, right? And so, that being said, I mean, with all this stuff going on, I was like, you know what? I need to put myself out there and I need to be my own voice with technology and all of these things. So I'm super happy to be here with all of you and share my experiences. I could say when I left my brokerage, which I was at for 5 years, one of the things they said, oh, we're going to put you on all these things and we're going to put you in the front, of all of our events and things like that. And I'm like, well, kind of too late. So I came here to EXP and I'm just so excited for the future of technology for women, for, all the stuff. And like what you said, Courtney, real estate is not really a male dominated space, but we're not really seeing a lot of women, I feel like, on the social media platforms as much. So, we definitely want to change that. So that's just a little bit about, what I went through so far in real estate.
Love it. Shannon, you're up next.
Hey there, thanks for having me. Shannon Milligan here in Richmond, Virginia. I love social media. I love technology. I joined the Chat GPT bug, and I'm using that to help write my listing descriptions. And it's really interesting when you look at a bot like that because it has gender biases in it. If you really look at it, because who is programming that? A lot of the times it's men because women were not raised in STEM. We're starting to see that happen now. We're encouraging girls. But if you use that kind of bot, you'll see gender bias in there and lots of fair housing violations. So make sure you're reading over that and changing some of those words. But that's something that I have been implementing in my business to use technology in that sense. And then the other gender bias that I see kind of in real estate is even at our agent attraction, right? Mm-hmm. So men, they're taught at a young age to go out and hunt and kill and drag home what they eat. And we women have been taught, at least I'm going to be 47, to be a little bit more mild-mannered and to be a little bit more quiet and apologetic, as we've all mentioned before. And I see that happening when it comes to agent attraction. So I'll see men go out there not afraid to bring somebody over and shoot their shot and say, let me tell you about this great opportunity. Whereas I find not all, but a lot of us women step back a little bit and we're like, I don't want anybody to think that I'm using them. At least this is how I feel. And so I see the bias in that as well. And we women have to take some ownership in breaking that chain. It's a bit like that meme where you see the elephant is tied to the lawn chair. We're tying ourselves there sometimes because we're not being assertive to go in there and break that and then mentor and teach the younger generation. It's okay to take yours too. But I love using technology, but I do see that some of that gender bias is there with the bots and what have you.
It's an excellent point, and it really is. And it's something, I think we'll want to continue to unpack what does it mean to be unrepresented in STEM, just at large. And we know some of the challenges and, whether it's people dropping out of those types of courses, but if you're not involved in these practices, growing up or get inserted, it's really hard to stay there. Lakeisha, over to you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're seeing at this intersection of real estate and technology and potentially, this misrepresentation, which may or may not occur there.
Okay. I'm Lakeisha Cunningham. I am the team leader of the Cunningham team, but my husband and I also have the EXP Newcastle office. And being a owner of a real estate office is definitely placing me as a female like in the minority. And what I'm noticing is that given the opportunity to be an owner of a branch office, I am now able to cater many of the events and also able to work on like, mindset things that impact women that are in this business that I can give them priority. I can give them a voice, and I can also pull together resources that are going to build their businesses where this may not have been the focus in other brokerages that I've been at. But now that I'm in this role, I can actually make a difference. And that's been amazing to me. In terms of technology allows me to kind of, it allows me to increase my influence. And I want to say like build my tribe. Like there's so many women that get connected to me because of what they see me do. And it's like, okay, finally, there's somebody that understands me. Finally, there's somebody that can relate to me in terms of my struggles. So I'll get, women reaching out to me, asking me questions. And then I have had a amazing mentor. Sheila Fageron, like, has been amazing in terms of mentoring me. When I have issues, like, I can just get on the phone with her, like, and just get my questions answered. So what she's given me, I now give to other women because she's been a role model for me. She's been an example. She's been, a place where I can find, support, encouragement, identity. And I just pass that on to the next generation. So when we talked about like lack of role models, I'm not experiencing that now, but I have experienced that in the past. And I believe that we're coming into a time period where, we need to put ourselves out there so that other women coming up behind us will find a place of identity, will find a place, see that they have the courage to be able to overcome some of the challenges that we've already been through. And I believe technology allows us just to show our struggles, show, I guess I want to say like, we're able to show the authentic process, meaning that it's not just, how usually like a lot of people like highlight the good and then they don't show the bad. Well, technology allows me to show the good, the bad. My office, these women can see me like going through the struggles, going through the obstacles, and it builds like I don't know any other word besides it just builds like a close knit tribe. And these ladies know if they need me for anything, like I'm there. And I feel like I have that in other women that I've, come in contact with. And I felt that even when I joined this panel, like there's so many women here that truly care about, my success. And there's so many women that I can glean from their experiences. And I think that that's what technology does for us. And that's what this forum really does for us.
That's very well put. And, it is a community at EXP Realty and EXP at large. So, I mean, we're grateful to be part of that. And it is fun to be able to help each other. So I'm hearing the same themes around mentorship, around, inclusion. One thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, which is something I'm sensitive to personally. And I want to see what you guys think about this topic. There seems to be this concept that it's just, there's a real anomaly that a woman could be a leader, in certain circles. And so you hear somebody introducing somebody as, oh, this is our female CEO. Like there's like, are we gonna have a unicorn come in next, right? Or a girl boss. Like how do you guys, and like I said, the whole group, I say guys, gals, whatever you want to be. How do you feel about that terminology? What's that doing for us?
So that's like a really good point on that whole thing, because when we introduce male CEOs, we don't say, hey, this is our male CEO, right? Or any other title, right? We don't emphasize that. And especially, the whole girl boss situation, in the beginning, I think everybody used that term, right? Okay, let's empower women, let's empower, all these ladies. But then it was kind of used as a negative, right? I was just having a conversation with someone, and they were like, someone told me, yeah, you go do your girl boss thing and I'm going to go do my CEO thing, So it's kind of like, be that little girl, go do your little business, right? So I think now it's kind of like a negative, and people are trying to get away from the girl boss term of what like I'm seeing. But what do you guys think, Shannon and Lakeisha?
So I think that one of the things that we have to consider is that persona is not going to change if we continue to celebrate it. And what I mean by that is when we have t-shirts that say girl boss, we have planners that say girl boss, mugs that say girl boss, then that's how people begin to identify. And if we want to be known as the boss or the CEO, we cannot participate in the exactly. We cannot participate in the celebration of the girl boss movement. So we can have t-shirts with it plastered all over it, but we want to be respected as just the boss.
I agree. I think it takes us speaking up and correcting people, not being afraid to correct, because people will say girl boss, and it's like, no, 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 I'm a boss. And, you know, it's interesting when people tell me how lucky I am to have this great husband. I'm like, I'm not lucky. I chose well. Like, I correct them in that too. I think it's important that we have some ownership in these conversations. I think people are well intended with the way this starts, and they don't realize that it's going to keep us in a box, keep us in line with, you know, standing a step behind and what have you. We got to be able to correct them and then make a leap in front of them as well. I don't need to be the biggest boss out there, right? I don't have to run the world, girls, but I would like to run beside the guys and make sure that there's equal pay. I often wonder when I go on a listing appointment or what have you, and if I don't get it, if it was, well, I wonder if they asked the man if they would take a reduction in their pay. And it's always something in the back of my head. And you know what I had to do? I didn't get one yesterday because I would not lower it. I know my worth, and I had to stand for that. And sometimes when you make that stand, you're not going to win the battle, but you're going to win the war down the road.
Absolutely.
It's really well put. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and quote Beyonce here because you reminded me of this, which is, you know, I'm not bossy, I am the boss, right? So I think it's all in the same vein. Amanda, Corey, any kind of concepts around, you know, we talked about, hey, I'm sorry, this concept, we're constantly saying that. What do you guys think about the nomenclature on female and girl bosses?
I think it's really important to speak up, and not only speak up, but to educate. And, you know, one of the things that I will start with is, hey, thank you. You know, I understand that you think that that's a compliment, and I appreciate that you're trying to compliment me. You know, by you saying that, that actually takes away a lot of the hard work and value that I deserve, because of, you know, it limits, you know, the idea of my success. And so not only do we need to speak up, but I think that there's a really elegant way for us to start to educate and help other people understand why it's not okay to say these things, because otherwise I feel like we are put into a place where we are defensive, and we don't need to be. You know, I think that there are so many unconscious biases that they don't know until they know. And so in a really kind way, we can say, thank you, I appreciate that. Here is, you know, a better way maybe to communicate your feelings of appreciation for me.
There you go. Amanda, any thoughts here?
I agree on the education piece. I think that's an important part of it. And, you know, I love the idea of doing it elegantly, Corey, and I respect you if that's how you do it. Sometimes I'm just blunt, where it's like, yeah, that's not how I refer to myself. I appreciate it if you don't either, because I think sometimes it's just the simple matter of calling it out. And, you know, being polite is usually the best way to go, but sometimes it doesn't sink in as much as a, look, that's rude, I don't appreciate that, and just calling people out too. But you got to do what's best for your style. But overall, I think it's making people aware. And I would say it's not just making other men aware, but it's also have that conversation with the friend carrying around the girl boss planner. And, you know, I'm always curious, like, well, why do you identify? Lakeisha, I like how you refer to it as an identification. Like, why do you do that? Or does it make you feel empowered? Because, you know, probably more sensitive to a woman who's carrying that around. But having the conversation to say and educate them, like, you don't have to describe yourself that way. You can just be a boss. Corey, maybe you need to tell everyone where you got your paperweight, and that can be the way to subtly or not so subtly say, why don't you use this paperweight instead of the girl boss one, kind of thing.
Well, It's really funny. I think that, when we all started using Girl Boss, 10, 15 years ago, it had a much different connotation than it does now. And I think that the whole idea of Karen, same thing, I think that a lot of these were really well intentioned when we started using them, and I think that over time, because of the unconscious bias that still exists within our society, they've been weaponized and used against us to continue to pat us on our heads. And so that's where I think we just need to be really clean, say it as it is, say what you mean what you say.
I love it. It is say what you mean and do what you say as well. There's an action component to this, right? As it is Women's History Month, I think it's important to talk a little bit about, how are we capturing the achievements and contributions of women throughout history, even starting right now, because we have more tools, right? I want to talk a little bit, maybe Rizwana, we can start with you around how do you get that digital storytelling to really sing your value?
Yeah, so I actually attended an event last year with a woman named Carolyn Richardson Payne. And she was actually Will Smith's first acting teacher. And so she was doing the art of storytelling. And she was saying that it's really, really important for us to tell our stories because there's so many stories like generations to generations to generations, right? That are passed down to us, and like we're so busy working that we don't share those stories with our kids, with our cousins, friends, family. There's so many stories out there, even with our real estate business, right? We go through so much. You guys know that when we do a transaction, it's never smooth. There's so many hurdles sometimes. So just putting those things out there for people, because I think Lakeisha said this, that we always put out like all the successes, right? It's not just the good, there's also the bad. So, really connecting with your audience, on social media, and just kind of telling them what it is, right? Because people love to hear value. They want to hear value. It's not always about like me, right? So story could maybe influence someone to, okay, you know what? I can do this. Okay, I'm not a real estate agent, but I'm going to go start my business because I saw Rizwana, I saw Lakeisha, I saw Shannon, I saw Courtney, on social media. And if they can do it, I can do it too. So it's just the storytelling of it as well, and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just put on your phone and, just hit record and just tell your stories, right? I tell this all the time. All of us, well, majority of us came into real estate, but that's probably not what we wanted to be when we grew up, right? Did any of you say, hey, when I grow up, I'm going to be a real estate agent, right? So in that same way, share your story, right? That could be a very nice story to share. Okay, I got into real estate because of this, or I got into this business because of this, and you might resonate with someone who might be going to like through a hard time or even a good time. Like, you know what? I did that too. And let me share my story in the comments, right? So it's all of the stuff. And then collaboration is another great thing. All these platforms, Instagram, Facebook, all these things, you can go live and you can pull people and you can, talk about your experiences, because we don't share enough of like our life. It's like we're born, we die. What happens in between? If you don't tell your story, no one's going to know. So that's really, I think that hit me last year with Caroline. And then when I heard she passed away in December, I'm like, okay, we're going to honor this woman and then we're going to tell more stories, because, there's so much going on in this world, and, your story might help someone out there.
So I'm hearing own your story, right? You got to own your story. You've got to be brave, which I think is something, Corey, you said earlier. Shannon, what are you thinking?
I think women naturally, and again, I'm generalizing, have a lot of soft skills. We're trying to learn the hard skills because with the STEM coming up and what have you. And I think we need to utilize those soft skills, the way we know how to nurture and the way we know how to connect. And everybody's so gosh darn down into these things that people just want to feel seen and they want to feel heard. And so I like to utilize my Instagram stories to document my day. And what's been really interesting is my business has continuously gone up. And the more I share authentically and the struggles, as Rizwana was saying, weirdly, the more business I've been getting. And I think that that is something that I have maybe over a man, a superpower to be able to connect in that way. When I told my followers, I hate that, I like to call them friends, but for the term, when I told them about going on Wellbutrin, You should have seen the amount of messages that I got about that privately because people are struggling. When I told people that we paid off our mortgage and I told them, yeah, here's how we got into debt. We had this beach house that we couldn't afford and we had to make the sacrifice to sell it. I put that out there. The messages that I got, because it creates trust and compassion, and that you are going to be in the trenches with them. And storytelling is wonderful that way, whether it's Instagram stories, which also then shares to your Facebook stories, or if you are on YouTube. But I think being able to put yourself in that vulnerable position to make that connection is really important.
Well put. Lakeisha?
So I'm going to say it became noticeable to me, the need for storytelling. I'm going to say about 2 years ago. And how this came about, Rizwana actually mentioned, knowing what happens in somebody's life in between the time that they're born and the time that they pass away. And my grandfather passed away 2 years ago, and he was 93 years old. And I was given the task by my grandmother to deliver his eulogy. And I knew him as my grandfather, but I felt like people were going to expect more, or expect me to share more about his life, just not limiting to the fact that I knew him as my grandfather, and what he did for me personally. So I started digging. And as I was digging, trying to find information about him and who he was as a person, like all throughout his life, and not just limiting it to our personal relationship, I noticed how difficult it was. And what I said to myself is, there's going to be a period where one of my grandchildren are going to want to know me, and they're going to want to know my struggles. They're going to want to know the things that I had to overcome in order to be who I was. And I said, this technology that we have in terms of social media, they won't have to dig like me. Like, if I start putting my struggles out there, like, I don't want them to just know my successes. I want them to know, like, when I fail, because I have failed at things, what it took for me to get back up. Like, yes, I hit a hurdle. It caused me to fall. I made some mistakes. But during the midst of this, I see in this year, she was, down and out. 2-3 years later, she was back up and running. She shared everything in between. So it's okay for me to fail. And it's also okay for me to know that somebody before me failed, but they got back up and they kept trying. So I think social media allows, those that are following us, whether it be like family members. In my mindset, I'm thinking of, generations behind me in terms of my family, but it also allows me to influence other people to keep going. And that's because it allows you to be able to be the authentic you, like show up as you, show your struggles, show your successes. You don't have to hide them. And my generation and my children's children won't have to question who I was and what I brought to the table and what I was able to accomplish. And hopefully they'll be able to benefit from everything that I've been through in my lifetime, and it will, impact their lives.
That's important. I mean, this concept of showing the highs and the lows is important, because we don't really do ourselves justice, or the people that are out there in the ether hearing us, if we're only talking about the things that are going well. It creates this unattainable kind of benchmark that nobody can, right? And I think that's some of the challenges around social media, right? Is some people are not sharing things that are maybe less than ideal. Are there other types of digital innovation that we think are helping to advance gender equality? And I'd love Amanda and Corey to chime in on this one first.
Yeah, I've got one. And it was interesting, Courtney, when you had asked me to be part of the panel and I was reading through, what the panel discussion was, I saw equity and I'm like, wait, it's supposed to be equality. And so I did a little bit of searching. I really like the change that we're making around the conversation about equity versus equality. Equality means everybody gets a bike. Equity means everybody gets a bike that actually fits them. And so when I take that back and I take a look at what we're doing in B2B marketing, I take a look at my target market and I take a look at my personas. And I craft and I personalize messages for each of my personas. And so because we have this idea of marketing and automation, we can start to personalize and not just have one bike for everybody, but we can create individually and custom craft bikes and custom journeys for each of our personas. And so whether it's a family where the woman is, leading the charge on the home buying, or maybe it's the man that's leading the, buying on the home journey, or maybe it's a single woman or a single man. There are so many different personas that you can bake into your messaging and how you're reaching out in a more authentic and more precise way that is personalized and really kind of meets that person where they're at.
Great points.
I'm going to deviate from the marketing side and talk to, something that sort of shocked me. And I learned this a few years ago, but in, for example, crash car testing, there are only male dummies used, and women and men don't typically have the same build. When it comes to different pharmaceutical testing, it's not necessarily, and I think a lot of us learned this in the COVID vaccine testing, it's not necessarily a widespread and diverse group of people that it's being tested on. And so I think these things where I'm hearing about, okay, now they're setting up car crash testing sites that have female dummies, and all of these things, like getting them into the ecosystem, sharing them on social media so we can learn and get educated and then take a stand and have a voice and talk about these things. And that's something I think, in general, women do really well, is we share and we communicate and we pass these stories along. And so I think the more we know about where there are deficiencies and where women are represented, the more that we can begin to address those, whether it's in, pharmaceuticals or, crash tests or whatever 100 million things are probably out there, already that I don't even know yet that it exists. So that's where my mind went when you were asking about technology with women.
And I think that's where that concept of bespoke, because, there are women, there are men, but there's a lot of different types of ways that people identify, right? And so the next conversation is, how do other people identify that want to, make sure that they're feeling represented, right? I think that's like a next chapter of this that needs to be addressed. It should be addressed right now, frankly. All right. Okay. Ladies, Letitia, Shannon, Rizwana, anything else on technology before I move to our wrap question?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something because I know there are companies out there, they are trying to put women in the forefront. And I actually wanted to share this with you guys. I don't know if you can see this, but Hershey's, right, for Women's History Month has this branding, right? Hopefully you can see it. It's not mirrored, but they emphasize on she. And then it says she is motivated, she's determined. And then there's the chocolates, right? Inspiring, empowered. So I thought that was pretty cool that these companies are really emphasizing on that, because I think as women, especially in the South Asian culture, that's where I'm from Afghanistan. There's a lot of responsibilities that is put on us as wives too, do everything. And and in our culture, it's like, oh my gosh, she's working. Well, then how's she doing the housework and how's she doing all these other things? Well, that's the thing. You have to get with a partner that's going to support you, because you have to build this together with each other, right? And like my husband, for example, we're not in the same culture. Like, he's from Sri Lanka, I'm from Afghanistan. We don't marry outside of our culture. Like, Afghans marry Afghans, Sri Lankans marry Sri Lankans, right? So, but I married him because he understood the importance of working together and building each other, right? And that's the same thing with women as well. Like, we need to work together. We need to support each other. I was talking to someone the other day and they were like, oh, the women in my culture don't support us. We don't support each other. It's always competition, but it shouldn't be competition, right? Because you can build your empire by yourself. Maybe it'll take forever, but you need to work with other people as well and build this together. So I love seeing companies like Hershey and all these other companies that are really putting things out there. And, and also with technology as well, there's so many programs that are putting women in the forefront. So I think we're heading in the right direction. We still have a lot of way to go, but, we're going to get there with more discussions like this.
Agreed. Shannon, Lakeisha.
I just am in, I agree with her totally. I just think that sometimes you can't always find your support directly around you. But panels like this and forums like this allow you to just get around like-minded people, and then there are people that can enhance your businesses. They can enhance your mindset. They can sow into you. That there's just so much value in these forums, and I think that at this point, women do not have to accomplish things alone. There's so many other people who can identify with your struggles that are willing to push you along the way and make sure that you reach your destination. So I'm grateful for this.
Well put. Shay, anything to add before we do our speed round or recap? Okay. We had a very organic conversation, a lot of best practices that I heard. I learned a lot, right? I think what would be nice is to kind of maybe in 30 seconds or less, encapsulate what you think is the most important, whether it be tool or application or even method to build your influence. And I'm going to start with Amanda because I'm just going clockwise.
Awesome. Okay. The best tool to build your influence. I'm going to kind of go to what someone said earlier, and it's trusting your instincts and your story at the same time. And by that, each of us on this call, and as is, every human out there, we have our own set of experiences. We have our own story, and there's value in that, whatever that may be. And so I think taking what we've experienced and bringing that to the table, and then trusting your gut to say, hey, I'm going to put this out there. And sometimes it takes bravery to say it and to put yourself out there, whether it's sharing your story on Instagram or attending a panel or asking for the raise, asking for a mentorship relationship. So, in summary, I guess, just, put yourself out there, trust your instincts, and go for it, because if you don't ask, then the answer is no. But if you ask, you very well may get a yes.
Miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
That's right. That's right.
All right, Corey, what are you thinking?
Speak up, advocate for yourself, and educate those around you, not just women, but everybody. And it is our job to do that because we have an entire generation of young ladies to raise and pave a better path for.
That hits home. That was beautifully put. All right, Lakeisha, what do you think on this topic, this building of influence? What are your best tidbits of advice?
My best tidbit of advice is to identify your tribe. And what I mean by that is surround yourself with people that are in support of where you're going and what you're trying to achieve, and limit and give very limited access to people who have the ability to influence your mindset and make you second guess your abilities. So I would just say find your tribe and find your support.
And this whole concept of you act really and you're influenced most by the 5 people you're around the most. Pick those 5 people wisely, right?
Absolutely.
Shannon, where are you on this topic of influence building?
I'm with Corey with advocacy to really make sure that you are standing up for what you believe. The pink tax is real, y'all. And the only way we're going to get rid of that is if we stop buying the pink stuff. Or even with the Hershey's, which I think is awesome, but also questioning, are they just marketing to me for my marketing dollars? Like, how many women do they have on their seat? Well, you can't just ask that question. Now I really want to know. And then you have to push to see that change. And so I think you just have to stand up for yourself, and also adjust her crown, help her with her crown, help her, lift her dress so she's not dragging it. We have to help each other along. And there's plenty of pie for all of us to eat.
You're right. It's not a scarcity mindset. So Rizwana, bring us home.
Sure. So I just say, just show up, right? Just show up in these spaces, okay? And make your voices heard. Like, for example, with eXp Realty, we have a platform called Workplace, and there's so many opportunities over there. You just have to go raise your hand, use Work Chat and raise your hand. And if you're not at eXp Realty, that's okay. Still show up in your, corporate events. Go to all these things and learn, right? I always tell people we have 2 ears for a reason and 1 mouth. So listen, right? Because you should be in a room where you are not the smartest person in the room. You have to go out there and just learn. Surround yourself with people who know more than you do, because you're going to learn a thing or two. And then when you do learn those things, it's your responsibility to pass it on. Go educate, right? And go put it out there, because it's like, you went to all these spaces and these people helped you who are smarter than you. Now it's your turn to go do the same for other people. That comes back to the storytelling. Go out there, put yourself out there and tell the stories, because there's so many people right now that are struggling or in pain. And maybe, if someone looks like them or talks like them, or just in same experiences, that might help them. That might be the support that they needed. And there's so many things that we can do to just help each other. So that's how you build your influence. And what Shannon said before, right, that builds trust, right? Storytelling, put it in your stories. So that's what I have to say about that. So just show up and just be authentic.
That is a great capstone. Ladies, thank you all for joining us today. And I will say to everyone who's out there watching this, thank you also for joining us. And you'll see we have Women History Month all month long. So dial back in. See you guys later. And thanks all.